If you have looked at the numbers the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out, you have probably seen the same claim I did. Housing is the biggest expense for retirees, sitting at around 36% of the average budget. For a lot of households, that is true. But if you are someone with a modest pension or a healthy 401k sitting behind you, that number is hiding something much bigger. There is a tax quirk buried in how Social Security gets taxed that can push your real tax rate on an extra dollar of income up to 40.7%. Nobody calls it that on any IRS form. Financial writers call it the tax torpedo because it hits fast and it hits hard, and most people never see it coming until the bill is already sitting in their inbox. For a typical couple pulling income from Social Security and a retirement account, this one mechanism can quietly cost an extra $4,500 to $9,000 a year. Money that never shows up as a line item on any budget spreadsheet. It just disappears before it ever reaches your checking account. Think about it like this. That is roughly the size of a mortgage payment, or a full year of homeowners insurance and car insurance combined, gone before you ever choose how to spend it. So where do retirees actually spend the most money? The honest answer is not just the mortgage or the property tax bill. A good chunk of it is money that gets taken before you ever get to spend it at all. In the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through the real top 5 spending categories for 2026, including the one that quietly outweighs housing for a lot of people, and the 3 moves that can take the edge off it. Here is the mechanism, in plain terms. Up to 85% of your Social Security benefit can become taxable once your income crosses a certain line. That line moves depending on your other income, but once you cross it, every extra dollar you pull from an IRA or a 401k does not just get taxed once. It drags a piece of your Social Security into taxable territory right along with it. I used to think housing was the undisputed king of retirement expenses. After spending time with the 2026 tax brackets, I changed my mind. For a lot of middle-income retirees, the IRS ends up being the most expensive roommate in the house. And here is the part that catches people off guard. The number you just heard is not the whole story either, because the 2026 cost of living adjustment of 2.8% raises your Social Security check, which sounds like good news until you realize it can push you further into that torpedo zone without you doing anything at all. Let's do the math on a real scenario. Picture a couple bringing in $50,000 a year from Social Security and pulling another $40,000 from an IRA. They decide to take out an extra $1,000 for a vacation. Under ordinary rules, you would expect that $1,000 to get taxed at their bracket, somewhere around 12% or 22%. Instead, that $1,000 makes an additional $850 of their Social Security taxable too. Their total taxable income goes up by $1,850, not $1,000. At a 22% bracket, that is $407 in tax on a $1,000 withdrawal. Do the division, and that comes out to a 40.7% effective rate, nearly double what they expected to pay. Nobody designed this to punish you specifically. It is what happens when a benefit formula built decades ago runs into a modern retirement account. The IRS is not chasing you down, it just wrote the rule once and never adjusted it. For how many retirees now live off a mix of Social Security and 401k withdrawals? The invisible cost here is not the tax bill itself, it is what people quietly give up to avoid it. Some retirees stop taking withdrawals they actually need, skip a vacation, or delay a repair, all to stay under a line, most of them have never seen written down anywhere. Most retirees fall into this trap because they were taught to withdraw from taxable accounts first and leave retirement accounts alone as long as possible. That advice made sense for decades. In 2026, with a bigger Social Security check and a bigger standard deduction, it can work against you instead. If you are between 55 and 65 and just realized your fixed expenses were never as fixed as you thought, consider subscribing. We track these shifts every year, so you are not caught off guard by outdated math. The fix is not complicated, but it does take a bit of planning ahead of the year you actually retire. Think of it as building a sandwich around your tax bracket, filling in the space you have room for before you spill over into a higher one. Step 1 is using the deduction that came with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Starting in 2026, anyone 65 or older gets an extra $6,000 deduction, or $12,000 for a married couple where both spouses qualify. That is on top of the regular standard deduction. In a year where a required withdrawal pushes your income up, that extra deduction can absorb a real chunk of it before the torpedo zone even kicks in. Step 2 is filling your lower brackets on purpose, before Social Security starts. If you retire at 62 and do not start Social Security until 67, you have a window where your only income is what you choose to withdraw. Converting some of a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA during that window, while staying under the $184,500 wage base most people never come close to anyway, lets you pay tax now at a rate you control, instead of later at a rate the torpedo controls for you. Step 3 is the qualified charitable distribution, or QCD. Once you turn 70 and a half, you can send money directly from an IRA to a charity, and it never counts as taxable income at all. It bypasses the torpedo completely, because the money never shows up on your return as income in the first place. Skip these 3 steps, and the cost is not just a bigger tax bill in any one year, it is a permanently higher tax bracket that follows you through every required withdrawal for the rest of retirement. I've watched this happen with a neighbor who was dreading his required withdrawals at 73. He was convinced there was nothing to be done about it. Looking at his numbers together, we found that shifting just $5,000 into a qualified charitable distribution saved him enough to cover his entire home insurance premium for the year. Fix the tax side and you have handled one stealth expense. But there is another one hiding in a category everyone assumes is under control: healthcare, and a single bad year there can cost you $50,000 out of pocket, more than the tax torpedo will ever cost you in a single year. The average retiree budget's around $7,000 a year for healthcare, and for a lot of years, that number holds up fine. The real risk is not the average year. It is the one bad year that never shows up in anyone's spreadsheet until it happens. I've seen people budget carefully for the average year and then get blindsided by the one year that was never average to begin with. Here is why. Original Medicare Part B has a deductible of $283 in 2026, and after that, it covers 80% of most costs. That sounds manageable until you notice what it does not say. There is no cap on the other 20%. Picture a retiree who has a sudden health event, a 3-week hospital stay followed by rehab, with a total bill of $250,000. Without a supplement policy, that retiree owes 20% of the whole thing, which comes to $50,000 out of pocket in a single year. Add a Medicare policy, and that same bill costs a higher premium every month, but the $50,000 exposure disappears. Choose a Medicare Advantage plan instead, and the monthly premium is usually lower, but you are tied to a network, and even the maximum out-of-pocket protection on some 2026 plans can run past $9,000. None of these are good or bad on their own. The 2026 Part B premium itself runs $202.90 a month for most retirees, and that climbs further if your income crosses certain thresholds, a surcharge called IRMAA that can push the same premium as high as $689.90 a month. It is worth sitting with that for a second. You spent decades building an income high enough to feel secure, and the system responds by charging you more for the exact same coverage. That is not a punishment for doing well. It is just how the formula is built, and knowing it exists is most of what you need to plan around it. The real decision is not whether health care will cost you money. It will. The decision is whether that cost shows up as a known number every month, or an unknown number the one time it matters most. And healthcare is not the only place where the comfortable choice and the safe choice pull in opposite directions. Look no further than the house you are sitting in right now. The advice to just downsize sounds simple on paper. In 2026, with home prices still elevated and mortgage rates well above where most existing homeowners are locked in, it can quietly cost more than it saves. If you bought or refinanced years ago at a rate near 3%, and you are looking at replacing that loan with a smaller home, financed at something closer to 6%, the math does not work the way people assume. Add in a realtor fee running around 6% of the sale price, moving costs that often land near $10,000, and a smaller place that still carries a $600 a month homeowners association fee, and the savings from downsizing can take 7 years or more to break even. Picture two neighbors on the same street. One sells a paid-off home to downsize and spends the first 2 years absorbing moving costs and a new mortgage payment. The other stays put, claims the larger deduction, and puts the difference toward property taxes instead. On paper, the second neighbor often comes out ahead for years before the math ever flips. That does not mean staying put is free either. Property taxes have climbed in a lot of areas, and that pressure is not going away. What has changed is that the deductions available under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, including that extra $6,000 or $12,000 for a married couple, give you more room to absorb a rising tax bill without needing to sell the house to do it. The reason this trade-off feels so uncomfortable is that housing is not just a financial decision. It carries the weight of decades of memory attached to it. That is real, and it is worth naming instead of pretending the choice is only about spreadsheets. Staying in a paid-down or low-rate home and using the tax tools already available to you is often the steadier path, even if it is the less dramatic one. Selling because a guide told you to, without running your own numbers first, is the version that quietly costs people the most. If you think your car insurance is a fixed cost you do not need to think about, you are missing the 2026 spike that is hitting people your age harder than almost anyone else on the road. Car insurance used to be one of those costs you could set and forget. In 2026, that is no longer true. Premiums have climbed sharply for drivers over 55, partly because insurers have started pricing in more claims data for this age group, and partly because repair costs on newer vehicles have gone up across the board. The lever here is how you buy it. Bundling your home and auto coverage with the same insurer usually saves money, but a lot of retirees never actually check whether a separate policy from 2 different companies would cost less for their specific situation. That 5-minute comparison, done once a year, is worth more than most people assume. Food carries a quieter version of the same problem. Package sizes have been shrinking while prices hold steady or climb. a pattern people have started calling shrinkflation, and it is easy to miss because the sticker price on the shelf does not change even when you are getting less for it. The fix is not to obsess over every receipt. It is a simple habit, checking the unit price, the cost per ounce or per item, rather than the price on the front of the package. Do that for the handful of things you buy every week, and the savings add up without turning grocery shopping into a chore you dread. None of these smaller levers replace the bigger fixes on taxes or healthcare, but they free up real cash every month, and that cash is what gives you room to make the bigger moves without feeling squeezed. We have covered the math on taxes, healthcare, housing, and now the smaller leaks in transportation and food. If you already know all of this and still have not made a single change, you are not alone, and it is not because you are lazy. There is a reason it is hard to actually pull the trigger, and it has nothing to do with willpower. There is a well-documented bias called loss aversion, and it explains a lot of what keeps people stuck. Losing $1,000 to taxes feels far more painful than gaining $1,000 in a Roth IRA feels good, even though the two numbers are identical. Your brain does not weigh them the same way. That is not a character flaw. It is normal, and it is worth hearing that plainly. If you have watched your Medicare premium climb past $284 a month because of IRMAA after 40 years of working and saving, that reaction makes sense. I remember that feeling, watching a number climb and wondering if you were being punished for doing everything right. You did not fail by not knowing about the tax torpedo before this video. Almost nobody teaches this part of retirement planning in school or at work because it only shows up once you are actually living it, year after retirement year. Ask yourself honestly, which one of these actually keeps you up at night? The tax number, the healthcare number, or the housing decision? That answer tells you where to start, not where everyone else started. The way through is not to overhaul everything on the same afternoon. Pick one stealth expense. The tax torpedo is usually the biggest one, and solve that first. Once that is handled, the next one gets easier. Because you already know the numbers are approachable instead of overwhelming, not overwhelming forever. Small, deliberate steps beat a perfect plan you never start. That is the whole game. Housing is still a big number in most retirement budgets. That part of the standard advice is not wrong. But the numbers that actually catch people off guard in 2026 are the tax torpedo and the healthcare tail risk hiding behind an average that never tells the whole story. That is not a small gap to close. Retirement is not really about learning to live smaller. It is about making sure the IRS and the insurance companies are not taking a bigger cut of what you built than they are actually owed, one avoidable dollar at a time. If this changed how you see your own budget, consider subscribing. We are here to help you keep more of what is already yours, year after year.